All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Facebook Live. This is we're happy to have you for a Surel's Place artist talk with poet Diane Raptosh. We're going to give you a little preview as to what's coming up here in the next few weeks. We've got some great local artists coming, and then getting back to a really amazing author out of California who's going to be here in May. Jodi is going to walk everybody through that. I'm going to introduce myself to a lot of you. I may not know you. I'm Greg Hahn. I'm the new executive director here at Surel's Place. I just started at the beginning of January, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me. I've been in Idaho since 1997. I was in journalism for about 15 years in Twin Falls and in Boise and Statesman and Idaho Public Television. I worked for Boise State then, running communications and marketing for about 8 years. When I left there, I wanted to do something to give back to the community and to really turn into the values that I care about, equity and sustainability. And this is an amazing place to do that. I have been so lucky to kind of land here with the board and the staff. I just feel like I've found a great spot to be, and I'm really happy to be part of the team. I think right now, with everything going on in the world and in politics and even in our own hometown here, that art's never been more important than ever for art to kind of bring us together, for it to elevate new voices, for it to confront uncomfortable truths, and really to remind us that we have a lot of shared experiences and we can learn a lot from each other. So that's all I wanted to say about me. I want to say thank you to Rebecca Mitchell-Collada. She of course is a founding executive director and has been off and on with the organization for almost 10 years and has been a huge asset to me as I kind of get this going. Also, Karen Bubb and Mike Baltzell recently left our board, which for some longtime folks, they might be shocked to hear that, but they deserve a break. So we're asking them back, to help out with the 10th anniversary that's coming up next year, but we really appreciate the work they've done. And speaking of the board, I just really quickly want to talk through. The board set some new goals. They have a 5-year strategic plan that they set at the tail end of last year. And it's a bunch of forward-looking goals. They want to increase local and national artist outreach. They want to boost outreach to patrons, who are just important in the creation, the sustainable creation of art. They want to build a plan for what's next. This neighborhood's changed and our mission is more valuable than ever. There's exciting times ahead. Jodi's going to talk about this spring and a bit about our hope to get back to more traditional programming as the pandemic clears, we hope. But first, I'm really excited now to introduce Diane Raptosh. She is, I think it's safe to say that she's one of the most important voices in Idaho's pantheon of writers today. She's a longtime friend of this organization. She's earned 3 fellowships from the Idaho Commission on the Arts. She was Boise's first and only, I think, poet laureate. She's been named Idaho's Writer-in-Residence, and she's received an Idaho Governor's Award for Excellence in 2018. It was the same year as Surel's Place. Her 4th book of poetry in 2013 elevated Ms. Raptosh to the national spotlight. It was longlisted for the National Book Award and a finalist for the Housatonic Book Award. She holds the Ike Behringer Endowed Chair in English at the College of Idaho, where she teaches literature and creative writing, as well as directs a program in criminal justice and prison studies. Today we're going to hear from her newest book, Dear Z, the Zygote Epistles, which is completing a trilogy she started with that national eye-catching book, American Amnesiac. Now, before I really get to the point, make sure you ask questions. Jodi's going to share some of your questions with Ms. Raptosh at the end of her reading, so throw those in the chat. We'll grab those and have that conversation here in a few. But first, I want you to hear what Poetry Northwest had to say about this new book. And this is a quote. Raptosh's voice is full of sonic mojo, and it kaleidoscopes. It's as if Lucky's think speech and Waiting for Godot went dancing with Janis Joplin, and they collided with a manic Jack Kerouac and the owl from that 70s Tootsie Pop commercial, after which they all sit at the bar and make remarks about everyone texting. I am pleased and honored to introduce Idaho's own Diane Raptosh.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Greg, for that wonderful welcome. And thank you, Jodi Eichelberger, for making this event possible today, and welcome Greg Hahn to Surel's place, one of the most magical places in the Treasure Valley. I'm so delighted to be here, and it's such an honor. So I'm going to just very quickly talk about how I came to write Dear Z, the Zygote Epistles. Just very simply, my daughter, I found out that my oldest daughter was going to have a baby, and as soon as I was there almost just days after she found out the news. So I thought, well, the world being what it is, I had sort of mixed feelings about that, but was mostly excited. So I decided, wow, that's an opportunity in terms of poetry. Maybe I could write a book of letters to a zygote. They're not necessarily letters to my grandchild per se, who's now almost 4 years old, because I wanted to introduce this zygote to the world, its perils and its beauty, and I did not want to scare or cast a hex on my own now granddaughter in any way. So that's how it all started, and I understand you all will be seeing the text of these poems, and I just wanted to mention that the underlining is only an indication to the designer back when that those words should be italicized. That's all those underlines mean in the text. So here we go. Dear Z, giving a gift is the basis for language, the heart's hip beat, arrive, survive. Zygote, I need not tell you. There's nothing like the act of steering molten thought through scrawled throat tones as a means to graft a whole new earth to things. Even with the eons known supposing over ends to all our days. Listen, Planet X News had scheduled the Z of this world for just about now. American Z, still there you are, lope stroke of Zorro, that sibilant mid-Mozart. Divisible mote on time's moonlit tambourine. I need not tell you, the letter Z has not always meant tail of the alphabet, that moody wind instrument, that allograph beauty, whose fevering ether croons atop naked frailty's tines. Turns out the ampersand, that in itself and, is what used to spell the ABC's end. And thus, you should home in on how it is, yes, such a pisser that profit is gift from the poor to the rich. And so, in the zombie apocalypse, the Zumwalt class destroyer is what comes to mind as my weapon of choice. Which ship I would use to take down caste. Oh Z, it's a swank can of worms to seize a beat at all. This sole fact makes my heart bird toward the towhead mountains. Excite, unite, and per se, and et and so. So, what might be zygote argot for just saying? All the poems are titled Dear Z or some variant on that. Zygote. You should enjoy your limniad state, nymph-like and windless, there on two sides of a threshold. Howsoever, the word hippo wonders if I mean to speak lemonade. This sake is murky, and it makes me wish I could toddle off to that original somewhere. in whom even the wines sip words and live alphabets draw on that spliff of night air. Life spec, here is the ordinal pregnancy. Without each other, we hole up within each other. Remember too, I have been busy turning the soil in the few people's hearts I plan to rename the grave when my day comes. I'm hoping to sow the silt-lined conditions for a happy death, choired by husband consciousness, that rye spirit vegetable, that solid air loyalty. Netflix, elsewhere, boots into verb, while power lopes in to daily unheaven the everyone. Still, for the most part, Ms. Zygote Missive, you are the test of the great human maybe. There, in that mother hip meadow, that namelessly face-free state of between. Dear nymph individual, let me not spew lemonade, as I've gotten wind of your balls out greed for the good of all species. I want you to take note of this beautiful work of art behind me. It's very zygote-like, and it just goes so nicely with all the colors of the painting on the cover of the book. So I can feel its gold energy emanating. Dear Life Spec, the world lets you take things in through holes in the face, which means I can say something like, vagus is a nerve that calms my words. The eye is a swinging door, and just to pass the afternoon, my eyes massaged these 7 breathy horses as I sat still on this lazy knoll. Here and there, I must take time to bow down to the river birch and stroke its nosy care, salute its hair-end plots to resync nation. Catkins waving thank you notes to those majorities who knew to just hang on. Oh, the age is strange as a lay of screaming butterflies. The public hip has heart dysplasia, and the now is this frank necropolis of razor wire and gated garden beds. To counter this means everyone must come to see all residents as members of my group. The pain of others, our severest strand of anguish. Fiber, string, coil, tendril, oracular Z. Sometimes you just want to walk toward the arms of the moans from that oncoming tuba. Something I used to do when my children were babies was I liked to sing to them the song Blackbird by the Beatles when I was sitting in a rocking chair. So I wanted to pay homage to that song by the Beatles, and in so doing pay homage to my own daughters. So that song was written in 1968, and that fact is sort of relevant in the scope of this poem. Dear Life Spec, when I sing Blackbird to the visiting baby, her fingers hook sounds from my mouth and fist them into furies of clay. What have I in common with most living things, and how do I differ, is the main question that blinkers her boundary conditions. She dung beetles along, the human experiment, grafting its skin onto madcap austerity, corporations, the nation's trophy constituents, prisons, harvesting children for profit. The whole system sounding its moves toward the sea lurch of languages overturn. Men sublimate anguish through punishment modes, the doomed blackbird practically tearing its beak in blank heartbreak of night. Hear this. Who will not feel his own pain can only inflict it. Visiting pilgrim, to plainly despair is to sip on the milk of the great human braille. Its tender uprisings, its horripilation, that's goose flesh. If it so happens you were awaiting some new takeaway on that 68 standard. How are you doing out there? Okay, very good. You can see the material is a little rough to send to any zygote, so I didn't dare do that to my then zygote granddaughter. But also, the letters bring us to the beauties of the world and the importance of such things as forgiveness. Dear Z, I'm tempted to CC you when I think of how my fists feel 6 months pregnant almost all the time, or of the ways some microorganisms in our blood must lie in wait for one blind chance to chew each other up. Why, just today, I couldn't stop myself from telling Jane, my favorite neighbor, off. I ignored the warning, every word counts, issued by a woman's orange t-shirt at the Y. The scream with Jane buzz cut my best genetic code, forgive, relieve. If time were alphabet's grapevine, I'd place myself at V, the village vessel. Veterinarian to a lone sea squirt, the rangy vaquera of love's ovum, the untried vizard of a recomposed we. Still, zygote, you could write a book on my misdeeds nestled in your gene-zipped envelope. My dear migrating cells, dear sigh to whom I send, dear sorry note. Hello, dear team, my dear Ms. Z, dear voisins, oh please, just sit here with me. There are a few references to Idaho here and there. Idaho being a rapidly changing state, as we talked about earlier, as was said in the introduction. Life spec. The alphabet's perfectly fitted to gum reef and tooth. Any baby knows only an imbecile fails to eat books. We are the noises we pore over, glyphs we salam and lip read. which surge from that EpiPen no one person owns. This gets me to thinking, a sidebar note, of every square screened thing's numbing of time, of whether the mind might rather live in a place called eunomia. It's Greek for goddess of good orders, laws, and green pastures. What's more, it's a large stony asteroid, the strength of whose orbit stays with me. Dear listen, I'll give you how some scenes in life might still fall in line, but at the brink level of emblem or myth. And how even an unpeopled Idaho may end up this wow state to live if you're big into seas of dry land and open valve euphony policies, where the poet is known to be cowboy of wild rye and the open page, riding out trails on a word called horse, raveling its earths in some human disguise. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Diane. We do have one question for you here.
Yay.
Let's see, I'm moving somewhere. Julie would like to know, did you learn or experience anything new during the process of writing this collection?
Oh, absolutely. That's sort of the point of writing a collection, I guess. I found out so many things about the alphabet, for example, that, as was mentioned in the poem, that the ampersand used to be the final letter of the alphabet. The fun thing about writing letters to a potential baby is you get to talk about everything. The wonders of the alphabet, which are the basic ingredients that a poet has to work with, is the alphabet and the language. So that was fun to think about the alphabet, to research the alphabet. I also researched other aspects of being human. Well, what is not included in that? I read a bunch of stuff about artificial intelligence. Some poems were about that. I learned some new things about sound combinations. So I learned a ton. I also learned about how imitative babies are. I was reminded of how babies are basically little imitation machines. And so imitation became a theme in the book. Bands imitating other bands, con rock bands, that became a theme in the book. There are some other imitative acts that I had fun with as I was writing the book. So yes, I did. I learned a lot as I was writing it. It was fun.
Wonderful. And I assume that people can get this at Rediscovered Books?
It's at Rediscovered Books. Yes, definitely. Yep, they're always really good about carrying local authors' works.
Great. Thank you so much again for sharing with us today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Diane Raptosh, and she has been with us several times now. We were trying to remember the last time she did a reading course was a little different then. We had people sitting around here.
Right, we weren't all masked.
We weren't all masked, exactly. We're going to move now to just give you a little bit of a preview into the upcoming studio airs. And this is a new program that was basically developed in response, well, actually, I should say, we first started featuring some local artists when we had a quick cancellation from a gentleman who was coming to us from Washington, D.C. We only had a couple weeks' notice, and we were like, what are we going to do? And so we shifted quickly to featuring some local events and realized that there's a lot to be gained from that. So we had that kind of in our pocket when we reached a point where we were not sure if we could feel good about bringing artists in from out of town, causing them to have to travel here. So we came up with this program called Studio Air. where artists can apply to use the space here at Surel's for a studio space, particularly now that people are having to use their homes to teach school and also as an office. This allows people to come into our residency and use the space here dedicated for their art. And believe it or not, next Sunday actually is going to be another artist event where we'll have completed a whole studio residency between now and then, and almost. And our first studio air for this cycle is Candace Redfield Dara. She's a visual artist, and I think you can maybe see a couple of her paintings that are representative of her work. One of them is acrylic, the other one has graphite, and those are some samples of her work. But the work she's going to be doing in her residency is quite different. It's almost like when I remember taking like a finance class, and they said, write down everything you spend. Or maybe it's like when people are starting to diet and you write down everything you eat so you get an actual representation of what you're doing with your day. Candace is planning on doing kind of a diary of things, the material world that she encounters in this space, documenting them, doing paintings of them, drawings of them, and collecting all sorts of different materials. So in her presentation, she will be presenting what she's documented during that week and asking the question, why do we care for material things? Why do we feature certain things more than others? Why are some material things important to us and other material things are not? And that will look really different because it could be a painting, it could be writing, it could be a photo, it could be a sketch, it might be a graph. We're not sure what she will be presenting next week, but we're looking forward to that collection that she's going to create based on her residency during the week. It'll be a real snapshot into her studio experience that we don't always see. Following that, we have a pair of dancers. They both come from different backgrounds, and the dance is being created for video. So later there will be a release of that video production, but our air residency will be more related to the process, and they're creating it kind of site-specific. So they'll be using these stairs, and that is Megan Novoa, and Cullens is the other artist. Caitlin Cullens, thank you. They both have very different backgrounds. Caitlin's worked in New York and other places, choreographing as well as being a dancer. And Megan comes primarily from Atlanta and Portland, and she now works with Idaho Dance Theater. She actually performed here last summer for Robin Stimes, well, 2 summers ago, Robin Stimes' piece. She was one of the dancers from the community that participated in that. So we're really excited to see what they create in this space. Then we move to an installation artist, Sean Solis, and he is doing a work that's called Insects and Engines. And it asks the question of how do humans get along with non-humans, particularly insects. And it's going to be kind of a sound installation as well as some video. He did a master's in installation at Boise State, and I got to see one that was installed locally off of State Street, and it was so interesting. It was a bunch of school desks, and much like schools have been looking for the past few months, there were no students in them. The teacher was represented by a speaker at the front of the classroom. I find this so interesting, how our interpretation of art changes with what's happening in the world. Like, thinking back on this piece now, it has a totally different meaning than it did when I saw it before. And he had a sound element to it, this device that was scratching into the desks. And so we're really excited to see what he creates in that installation. And we are going to, later in the season, have an opportunity for you to visit that one-on-one. We'll create individual reservations for you to see the installation, and it might be in a couple of different parts. And then our final artist in this cycle is Heidi Cray. She's a playwright, and she's like a hero. I've seen some of her posts where she sets goals for herself. I think it was like 100 rejection letters was her goal. Well, the goal is not rejection letters, but that is often the result, and writers just know this. Diane probably knows this as well, that your expectation when you submit something is not necessarily that it is going to be greenlit and a go. But Heidi's had a lot of success. Even during the pandemic, she's had pieces produced at different theaters across the country. And she is going to be writing 2 plays for children during her residency. And one of them is very fascinating because it's an adaptation of another local writer, Elizabeth Makeda. And she has written a book about a young girl who lives in a tiny house and wants to save rescue dogs. And I know that Elizabeth is writing what she knows when she talks about living in a tiny house, because her family does live in a tiny house. The part I'm not sure is, are they actually having dogs come to that experience as well? And the second play is Heidi's creation about a girl who, it has kind of a little bit of a werewolf element to it. She joins a pack of wolves, finds that that is her true place to be. So issues of identity and belonging, which is often a theme in Heidi's work. And we're not sure the final product of that. We may do kind of a Zoom with actors from all over reading the work. We'll keep you updated on that. So keep tuning into our Facebook page. And you can see on our graphic that we had sponsors for each of those events, so we're grateful to those sponsors. And thank you for being with us here today at Surel's Place. I'm actually brushing my forehead because maybe if you've been with us for some of these other online artist readings, talks, you can see that we've introduced some new technology, and for a good portion of that, Greg's handling it right now, good portion of that, I was at the computer sweating with the, trying to keep up with Diane's words and make sure the right words were on the screen. We're learning. It's all about amplifying artists, which is what Surel's Place does, connecting with community in any way we can. But we are very anxious to have you back at the house again and looking forward to that. Until then, we'll see you.